Hi guys, this is Mrs. Allison. I am excited to show you point slope form today. So what I would like you to do is take out whatever you would like to take notes on, because I would like you to take notes as you go through this. And obviously this is a video that's available on my website, so you can watch it more than once if you need to go back and reference the various aspects of point slope form, or check it as you go when you're working on homework. But this is my favorite form for writing equations of the line. I think it is the most useful. It is definitely, in my opinion, the easiest. Now, it is a little different than slope-intercept form, or y equals mx plus b, that you've been doing for a while. So bear with me. Watch this video as you take notes. So you may want to hit pause, pull out your notes, and then come back to it. Okay. So hopefully you're ready to take in my favorite form, point slope form, for equations of the line. Now, I've said mathematicians not super creative. So the name point slope form is because in this equation we see a point and we see a slope. So let's identify which is which. Okay. So, all right, so let's begin with the slope. And the slope is just like the slope was before. So the slope is still m. So my slope is represented by the letter m. Okay, well, this is called point slope form. So let's identify the point. And this is the part that tends to be the most confusing. So watch for just a minute. In here, I happen to have two what appears to be y's. I have a y. And then I have a y with a subscript of 1. We read that either y sub 1 or just y1. So it's just like the y's from our slope. This y1 is just a way to differentiate it from the y value that's here. And the reason we say y1 and y, not y2 and y1, is because this y that's just labeled as y and this x that's just labeled as x are simply going to stay y and x. They're not going to change. Nothing is going to substitute in place of them. Okay, so the point that I have, the point that I'm working with, is this y1 and this x1. Okay, so these two together make an ordered pair, or our point. So when we talk about a point, or when we talk about an ordered pair, we refer to it as x comma y. So I'm going to label this as x1 comma y1. That is my point that I'm going to be working from. Now, the next thing that I want to point out to you is these pesky little negative signs. Okay, these negative signs are very important. I'm going to highlight them in red just to remind you that they need to be there. Our formula has to have a negative sign in it, and our brains don't like negative signs. We want things to be positive. So just keep that in mind as we look through our problem. Okay, so let's move on and let's look at how we can graph from point slope form. Okay, so there are 4 steps that we are going to use to be able to graph an equation in point slope form. The first one is to identify the point that's given. This is the part we need to be very cautious about when we are going to identify the point. We'll look at that in just a second. The next thing we're going to do is put a dot at that point. So once we've identified the point, we're going to put a dot at that point. And then the next thing is to count the slope from the point. So just like we did before, we're going to look at the rise over the run and determine what that looks like, and then we're going to put another dot and we're going to draw as straight of a line as we can. I am graphing this on my iPad with a finger because I don't have a fancy iPad with a pen, and so therefore my line may not be as straight as I would normally like it to be. So here we go. We are going to identify our point. So what I want you to do is I want you to remember or look back at your notes at the equation we just said was point slope form. It is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So if I look at my equation, I'm looking for my y1 and my x1. But remember we said there are negative signs here, and we don't like those negative signs. So if I notice up at the equation I'm trying to graph, y minus 2, that negative sign's okay. But then I have this one right here that says plus 1. How do I get a plus 1 if in the formula it was supposed to be negative? If we look at this, y minus 2 equals 2/3 parentheses x minus is what it should have been. To make it a plus, it would need to be a negative 1. So my point for this particular problem is going to be the ordered pair. My ordered pair is -1, comma, +2, because the minus sign was supposed to be a part of the problem. See, there's the minus signs. Those are a part of the original equation. What's left over is a +2 and a -1. So my point is -1, +2. Now I'm going to find that on my graph. -1, +2 on my graph, and I'm going to put a dot. So there's -1, +2. Okay, you see it on my graph. I've put it on my graph right here. So -1 on the x, +2 on the y. The next thing that I'm going to do is from there, from that point, I'm going to count my slope. And so I'm going to count up 2 over 1, 2, 3. Up 2 over 1, 2, 3 is where I'm going to put my next point. So up 1, 2 over 1, 2, 3, put a dot. Okay, and then I can repeat that pattern. From there, I'm going up 1, 2 over 1, 2, 3, and I can put a dot there. Up 1, 2 over 1, 2, 3, and put a dot there. I can go backwards 2 over 3, but in the other direction. And so you can see my line start to take shape. Okay, so I would then graph as straight of a line as possible through all of those points. And there is my equation of the line. Okay, so you might ask yourself, why on earth would we graph from point-slope form if I could just graph in slope-intercept form? Great question. Look at the equation that I gave you. I gave you the equation y minus 2 equals 2/3 x plus 1. If I were to try to put that in slope-intercept form, just watch, you don't need to do it. If I were to try to put that in slope-intercept form, what would happen is I would need to distribute my 2/3. And so I would get 2/3 x plus 2/3. And then I would need to add my 2 over, and it's everybody's favorite thing, which is fractions. 2 plus 2/3. Yes, some of you say 2 and 2/3. That's not exactly correct. It's not wrong. But this would be 8/3 when I add those together. So my equation would be y equals 2/3 x plus 8/3. How many of you know where to graph 8/3? Well, if we did the math, it's 2 and a third, or 2 and 2/3. It should be just somewhere above 2. Well, that's really hard to graph 2 and 2/3 on your graph and then count a slope of 2/3. It's not very easy to do. And you'll notice that when I graph my line, I don't have to worry about that. I'm graphing nice even numbers, and I'm not trying to count 2/3 up from a number. So this is why I think point slope form is super helpful. Okay. I would like you to try one now. So what I would like you to do is pause the video, and I would like you to try to graph the equation y plus 1 equals -1/4 x minus 3. Identify your point, identify your slope, and see if you can graph it from there. And then come back, push play when you're done, and we'll see how you did. All right, so you should have identified your point as being +3, -1. +3 on the x, -1 on the y, and that is a point that goes right here. +3 on the x, -1 on the y. You should have identified your slope as -1/4. So from that point, we're going to count down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. We went down because it's negative, always to the right. I could go up 1 over 4 in the other direction. Let's see if I can get that point on there. And I could keep going in either direction. My goal now is to graph as straight of a line as possible for this equation. Now mine's a little bit off. Let's see if I can make it. Oh, that's as good as it's going to get. Okay, and so there is the equation of the line. Hopefully yours may be a little bit straighter than that. But what you can see is the reason I would do this is look at where my y-intercept is. It's not quite at 0. Kind of looks like it. It's really close. It's probably at 3/4 or -1/4 rather. I don't want to have to count from there. So it's so much easier to be able to graph my point and my slope when I know this isn't going to give me a nice y-intercept. Okay, so that is graphing. If you need to go back and review those 2 slides, feel free to do so. We're going to move on to writing the equation of a line. Okay, here we go. This is my favorite part. I think this will be the part you like the best. Now, why would I choose to write my equation in point-slope form? Because it is so much easier than slope-intercept form. Here's why. First, up at the top of my page, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite what I know point-slope form is. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Just to remind myself. And what I know is that my slope is the m value, and my point is the x1 and the y1. And remember, in the equation, I have negative signs as a part of my equation. So I need to remember those negative signs. Okay, so how do we write an equation in point-slope form? Well, I'm going to identify my slope. I've given it as m is 3/7. I'm going to identify my point, 2, 3, and now I'm going to fill in the equation. So watch. My equation being y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. In place of the m, I'm going to put the 3/7. X and y stay. Each of them have a minus sign. And in place of the y1, I'm going to put the y value. Well, the y value that's given is a +3. In place of the x1, I'm going to put the x value, which is a +2. So my equation is y minus 3 equals 3/7 parentheses x minus 2. And I am done. That is all I need to do to write the equation of the line in point-slope form. I can graph from here. This is an acceptable answer. And notice I don't have to deal with my fractions. I have an ugly fraction of 3/7, but I don't have to deal with it when going to simplify this into slope-intercept form. I can go ahead, I could go and distribute my 3/7 into my x, my 3/7 into my -2, and add my 3 over, but why would I do that when I can graph from this form? Okay, I would like you to try one. So hit pause, try this equation, writing the equation of this line. Oops, I lost a parenthesis. Write equation of the line, and then we will come back and check our work. So go ahead, check it with your partner, come back and push play. All right, so let's look at what this looks like. Again, I'm going to write y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, just to remind us that this is the equation we're dealing with. And I know that my m value, my slope value, is -2/5. I know that the point is 7, -3. So now I'm going to fill in everything. So I have y minus the y value. Well, the y value happens to be -3. Equals my slope, which is -2/5, x minus my x value, and the x value is 7. So hopefully this is what yours looks like. A better answer might even be y plus 3 equals -2/5 x minus 7. And this is your answer. This is your equation of the line with a slope of -2/5 that goes through the point 7, -3. That's it. Isn't that nice? Okay, let's try a fun one. What would you do with this one? I would like you to pause the video, turn to neighbor, tell them what you would do, or think about what you would do on this one, because what am I missing? You're right, I am missing a slope. So what am I going to do to find that slope? take a second and then come back. Okay. Do we remember how to find slope? Do we remember that slope that we did last block day is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1? Does it matter which one's y2 and y1? No. All that matters is that I keep it consistent. So if I call this xy, this xy, and I'm going to go and find my slope. I'm going to do 8 minus 5 over negative 3 minus 2. And that's going to give me 3 over negative 5. So I know my slope is 3 over negative 5. Great. Which point do you think I use? If you answered it doesn't matter, you're correct. It doesn't matter. You get to pick. So we're going to look at this using both slopes, and you're going to see that the equations are totally different. And that's okay. The answer is still the same. If I were to go and graph it, you would be able to see that it would go through both points. Okay, so let's try using the 2, 5. Probably most of you are going to choose 2, 5 just because it's the one with no negatives in it, and we like that. Okay, so I would do y minus the y value. Well, the y value for this one would be 5 equals my slope of negative 3/5 parentheses x minus my x value for this particular point would be 2. And there's your equation of the line. Now, if I go and use this same formula, but I switch it up and choose the other point, what does it look like? Well, it would be y minus the y value. Well, the y value on this one would be 8 equals the slope of negative 3/5 parentheses x minus my x value, but my x value now is negative 3. And so my final answer on this one would be y minus 8 equals negative 3/5 x plus 3. These two equations look totally different. But if I go and sketch a graph of that, a slope of negative 3/5, I could go through 2, 5. I will eventually get to negative 3, 8, or vice versa. So, not so bad. The key is I've got to find my slope first. So what do you think of point slope form? I like it. I think it is so much easier. Now, here's the good news. Anytime I give you an assignment where I ask for the equation of the line, you get to choose. Do you like point slope form? Do you want to do point slope form? Do you want to do slope intercept? Either are fine. You get to pick. I will say there are times, like if I get an ugly slope like 3/5, I'm probably going to do point slope form. If I have a nice pretty slope like 2, you could do point slope form. It still works. Or you could do slope intercept form. It doesn't matter. So you get to pick. So your assignment for today is a worksheet called, you guessed it, point slope form. So the sub should have that. And you can go through now and try point slope form and see how you do.